Good morning, everyone. There, look at that nice dove just landed on that fence. We are here at the Franklin Auto Museum, and kind of hard to find it. It's on a dirt road. We're going to go inside and see what there is to see as far as these nice looking cars. This is a collection from a guy that really put his money into it. And then when he passed away, he set aside a trust fund to take care of the cars. And it just looks like a bunch of sheds out here where these cars are parked. So we're going to find out what it's all about. So they've got several buildings here. Here's a 1930 Chevrolet Special Sedan. That is really nice looking. Wow, look at that. That's a beautiful car. It's a Packard. We'll be paying an entrance fee here pretty soon when the people show up. So that's a 1924 Packard. Here's one waiting to be restored, another Packard. Packard Clipper. Looks like they've been doing a little bit of work with it. Another flathead straight 8 engine. There you go, the old Franklin station for gas right there.
On. And to start you off, there's about a 6-minute video. It tells you a little bit about Franklin's in general and then how the collection came to be. So I'll cue that up here.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah. Our electronics have an honorary...
One of the curators will personally guide you through this unique color appreciation of what you're about to see. Please take a few minutes right now to learn some basic facts about Franklin's and how this collection came into existence. Most
just tap them on. All right, everyone. So my name's Tony. I'm our curator here, and I'm going to show you through our collection. The first thing I'd like to point out is that when Franklins were made prior to the Great Depression, there were over 2,600 makes of automobiles sold in the United States. So it was a very segmented market. At this time, 1925, you could get a brand new Ford Model T for less than $400. They were economy cars. They compared to Chevrolets and Dodges of the day. Franklin's, on the other hand, retailed over $3,000. So quite a bit more. These were tried and true luxury cars, and they were competing primarily with Cadillac and with Packard. Now, what Franklin did to distinguish themselves is that they were totally air-cooled. They were the only vehicles on the road back then that employed strictly air cooling. And this entire car is made out of aluminum, whereas most cars on the road were steel. So what that gave us was a very powerful, very lightweight car, and it actually sits on a wood frame because of that. The car is light enough where it doesn't need a steel frame, so it's a little more nimble and much lighter with a wood frame. Loved the 31 Cadillac, and if you notice, this car does somewhat resemble a 31 Cadillac, but he didn't want anything to do with the Cadillac mechanics, so he wanted a Franklin that kind of looked like a 31 Cadillac, and that's what we get with the Merrimack.
That's funny.
What are these little door things?
So these are strictly ornamental. Franklins actually have a sealed cooling system, but this is just how you order the car. Kind of looks cool with it open. So you could order it with the doors, with the slats, or with a flat hood like on the Series 11.
They don't do anything but cool the car.
The hood ornaments changed, what, over time, or was that a custom?
I'm glad you asked. This is kind of a long story, so buckle up.
Okay.
What we're going to see in the next building are our older Franklins, okay? The original Franklins from 1902 to 1924 were designed by John Wilkinson, okay? He was one of the founders of the company, and he was their original engineer too. Franklins have always been luxury cars, but the old ones are a little more sedate. They're a conservative luxury car. These are a bit more flashy. This is the classic era of Franklin. So 1924, there was a complaint by Ralph Hamlin, who was their largest distributor on the West Coast. He called Mr. Franklin personally and said, hey, I also own Oldsmobile and Packard, and I'm not selling nearly as many Franklins as I used to. They were kind of starting to look a little boring, comparatively. So they brought on a second designer. It's a gorgeous car.
Was leather a standard?
Leather was a standard on the open-bodied cars, and this is a convertible car.
Oh,
Okay. They had a variety of fabrics for their closed-bodied cars. If you wanted leather in one of those, you could get it though. It was just how you ordered it. Now this one's also a Series 11A, but this is the larger touring car, and this is a 1926.
What's the, do you know what the breakover between 25 and 26 on the Series A serial numbers are? I have looked for that and looked for that and I can't find it.
Well, this is 159526. Let me go see what the yellow one is. It's easy right here.
You got to be confusing the
1547. So 154, 159. So somewhere.
somewhere in there, yeah.
Look at that. They left the keys on the floorboard.
So is yours a 26?
Well, that's
Place for your golf clubs. Little side door.
according to the state of California, it's 25.
Interesting. Okay.
So I think it's a 26 actually.
That would make
It's
sense.
registered as a 25.
Okay.
But there was also that thing, back in those days, they were registered by the year they were sold, not
Right.
Little windows you can turn.
what's going on. I wasn't sure.
Stop the air from coming in.
31 and 16. And it was on the registration too. So
Okay. Interesting. Yeah, this is an old building, so it creaks and makes funny noises, and
You got
that's
a
just how it
turbine
is.
thing turning with the wind.
So one thing that I like to point out when we get to the 26 here is that chrome actually did not come out in production until 1929. Prior to 1929, you could get chrome, but it was one of those special that the engines couldn't do more, except they weren't geared to do more. They didn't have overdrive, and especially in Tucson, roads didn't permit any more than 45 miles an hour. That car was dubbed the mile-a-minute car because it would cruise at 60 miles an hour, which was clipping along for 1931. See, Franklin's, the mechanical brakes in a Franklin are actually very adequate because it's not a very heavy car comparatively. On a 4,500-pound Packard, you really feel
I
that,
see.
wow, this could benefit
Yeah.
greatly from hydraulic brakes. So moving back here, we're going to see our second E12. We do have yeah. That is the 1934 Club Brougham. Yeah. Now this car is one of my favorites. This car has a really cool provenance. In 1930, this car was sitting in the lobby of the Commodore Hotel in New York City. This particular vehicle was Franklin's display car at the International Auto Show. Now, this is the very first car that Ray Dietrich designed for Franklin. This is the 1930 Pirate Phaeton. If you look at the sides of this car, it's called the Pirate Phaeton because it bows out like a pirate ship. And it's doing that because the running boards are actually concealed behind the door.
Oh.
Now,
So
this
it's part of that whole Art Deco
Exactly, yes.
design. And are the vents kind of part of that too, or was that functional?
Well, on the later Franklins, it was a cross-flow air cooling system. Okay, so the cylinders are vented horizontally. So in this case, they are functional because they let some air out of the engine bay. But typically, no, that again was just for style. Now this car has two. Yes, both of these are 1930s. Both of these were sold in the London showroom, so they are both right-hand drive. Oh. This one is as classy and as traditional as Franklin gets. This is their Deauville Sedan. Okay, so on this one we see carriage handles, we see carriage lamps, and on the passenger side it actually has an exit lamp on the running board too. This, I would liken this to a Lincoln Town Car today. Just, they use it sometimes for limousine service. It's a very elegant car.
Little tidbit, I don't know if it, the chassis, got the chassis done, and
The hood, we could look at that one.
that would be interesting to see.
Yeah.
Because the cowling on the right side of the engine is, you know, where they finally got it covered up.
Right.
It's cut out for the high distributor, but it looks like somebody took a pair of shears and cut it out.
Okay.
It was punched out.
Gotcha.
It was strange.
So this one is the 32 Pursuit Phaeton. Now, this body style is called a Sport Phaeton, and what that means is that there are no side windows, there are no exterior door handles, and the second cowl is quite elongated compared to a standard Phaeton. It's a three-step process. You have to pull this window down, the cowl pops up, and then all the doors open from the inside. This car.
And hopefully you don't get in a wreck and the fire breaks out.
Exactly.
Question is how you get out.
Yes.
Yeah, this car is certainly not practical in many senses. This was probably a second vehicle.
This is a really odd color combo.
It is. What's amazing is that this is the original color of the
Is
car.
that?
The beginning phases right now, but we're doing a 1925 McFarlane, and it'll be the museum's first restoration since the 90s. So, because when these were done, there were people that could work an English wheel and, you know, bend these doors, because aluminum is a little trickier than steel for coach work. And, you know, do all the wood slats in the frame, or not the frame, the car body. All right.
So I just read on this car, it took 4,500 hours to restore this car, but the most expensive restoration was this car here,
None.
and it cost
That's
them
why we're closed over the summer. So,
$250,000
the main house was
to
built in
restore this car.
1936. This was built in 1960, and then the next two buildings we're going to see were built in the 40s.
And you can see the seats in the back, but you had to take all of this and fold it up, and then your doors opened from the inside.
The cars in here.
Correct, yeah, cars are fine in here,
Yeah.
but no, it's not, it's comfortable enough for the cars, it's not comfortable enough.
Yeah,
for
no, I was thinking more of the cars than us, but.
We bought the rights to the company and formed the Franklin Engine Company. So they made helicopter and aircraft engine actually until 1975. So that is a helicopter engine, or a light aircraft engine. That's actually what was in the back of the Tucker, the 48 Tucker.
Except they redid it for water cooling.
Yes, exactly.
For some
Yeah, the
bizarre
only-
reason.
This was the engine they used in the Tucker car. Walking into some new buildings here.
We have 1905 to 1925 in here. That is one of the earliest surviving Franklins. Now, Franklin started in 1901 with a prototype. It was Mr. Wilkinson's prototype car that he developed at Cornell. That was their first production car, too, and it became known as the Franklin Model A. Now, Franklin had the very first four-cylinder engine produced in the United States. That was one of their hallmark inventions. And because of that, Franklin is known as a pioneering auto firm because of how much they contributed to the auto industry when it was starting. These older Franklins, you could see the full elliptic suspension really well, the tubular axles, and the wood frame. And then Franklin did make commercial vehicles for a while. That's a 1908 Franklin commercial truck. That's the only one we know of that's still around. And that's also my favorite car in the collection to clean because it only has 3 body panels. So,
It's interesting how it really shows off the air-cooled nature
yes.
engine. It's just like right there.
So the middle seat folds down so you can get into the back.
It's just cross-flow. That's why they're mounted transversely. The later adaptation, like we see on the it has been kept in. Everything, including the paint and upholstery, are original to the car.
Oh my gosh.
So did you hear that? This one behind me is all original.
Now, my joke with this car, you were a smoker in 1910. This was not the car for you to own. It has 3 different types of fuel on board. You're sitting over your gasoline tank, so that cutout on the floorboard is actually your gas tank. That huge tank on the passenger side is acetylene, that's for your headlamps. And whoever's turning those on, better turn them on quick, because if there's any lag time, you're gonna get blown back. The little bulbs underneath the side lamps are full of kerosene. So you have 3 different very flammable fuels on board this car. In addition, it doesn't have an oil pan. This has what's called a total loss oil system. So you oil the top ends of the cylinders, and as it uses it, it just spits it out the bottom. So,
What about the crankcase?
it's a very odd crankcase. It doesn't hold oil. I think it's more of like a dust shield is what they called it. But yeah, this is not a car you take around a campfire.
I didn't say anything.
Right? And you know what throws people off too is that you have to explain that the Franklin's air cooled enough for the passengers.
Yeah.
Okay, it only weighs 2,400 pounds.
Wow.
So again, Franklin, or actually Mr. Wilkinson's motto was scientifically lightweight, and he really tried to stay true to that. And what's interesting, with the 9B, most cars in this era and at this price point were chauffeur drive cars. Again, the automobile was relatively new. Franklin's, because they drove so nicely, were typically owner-drive cars. So there's a few things on this car because of that Mr. Franklin wanted to make sure it had. The first thing I'm going to show you is actually in the door pockets. It has an onboard tool chest concealed in the door pocket. In case anything hard to find dash clock.
So was the air pump standard on this?
On the Series 9 it was.
Okay, because in the 11 it was an option.
Right. It is totally original from 1924 and it has 3,000 original miles.
Wow.
That's even the original shine on the paint. Nothing has ever been done to that car.
Wow.
And then behind it, the navy blue one is also a Series 10C, so it's an identical car. This one's just about 6 months newer. That was used as a daily driver across 2 generations. So Mr. Gardner, who actually donated the car to us, his mother bought it brand new in Boston in 1925. She drove it, and then it was his car in high school, and he just held on to it. So it's got some mileage on it. That is its original interior. It was refreshed on the exterior and gone through mechanically, so it's had a light restoration.
Oh, this is pretty cool.
And then hidden in the back, and we have it there on purpose so it doesn't get tire life because it's not running. I guess out in Arizona, it's not like it rusts or anything.
Yeah.
It's not, it's just sitting there.
It gets dusty.
But a cactus started growing out of the foam in the seat. I'm like, well, that's something.
That's very
Yeah.
different.
Yeah. Okay, so let's see on this one. This car, I'm going to give you the history of this car first. This is a 31 Deluxe Coupe. The museum is the second owner of this car. The original owner was Franklin's vice president of sales. We ordered it new. Mr. Hubbard bought it in 1951, so we've had it for 70 years. What's amazing is that this car is totally original. It's original paint, original interior, that's just the mesquite side, and original powertrain. So let's look at the...
You would have the latest that I've ever had.
Yeah. And we just did a valve adjustment on this one about a month ago, so we keep this one running. We use it pretty much weekly. Okay. Yeah.
And it's just chewed out the way mine was,
Yeah.
not punched. That's interesting. Oh, that's the wrong punch.
Yeah. This car was sold new in New York City, and it was owned by the general manager of Westinghouse Electric. So this was his car. You'll notice this is the same color as the last 34 we saw. That's because Franklin didn't actually produce anything in 1934. They just recycled parts because they were going out of business. So they had leftover paint in this color and in black. So those are the 2 colors you got in 34. 34 is on with that exact set of luggage, right? A couple of years ago, we had a lady come in on a tour, and she said, hey, you know, I have some old luggage that I think would fit this car. I was just going to give it away to Goodwill. Do you guys want it? We said, well, sure. So she brought it in, and sure enough, it was that luggage set. It was perfectly in that car. It's definitely from the 30s. I don't know if it's from a Franklin or a trunk that exact size, but
Yeah, it fits
sure
and looks
works.
good.
It looks perfect.
Now that is a Franklin pancake.
It's left here.
I love collecting that stuff. I love the old hubcaps. That's what I like to collect.
This is like your designation.
Yes, it's actually the same bag.
Bag.
Yeah, that's a 27. Now that's an unrestored original. That's their larger sedan. We have that car, and it's historically significant because in 1953, just before he passed away, that is the very last Franklin that Mr. Franklin rode in.
Oh.
Here's a or not a V12, Pancake 12.
Factory until 2005, and then it was traded out here for another Series 9 we had.
I assume these are add-ons.
I think they are. And you know what? They fit perfectly with that car, and man, that's a handy
I
add-on.
don't know. Talking about blind spots, I can't get in my garage without somebody to tell me because
Yeah.
I can't see the right front fender.
Right.
So I want to be as close to the wall as possible, but I don't want to
Yeah.
be into the wall.
This car is the hardest, I think, for me to park anyway, just because it has such a big blind spot, and you don't really appreciate how much the car sticks out behind the rear window. It's kind of hard to gauge. So I've done it enough now where I'm pretty good at it, but yeah, it's hard to do with one person. Exactly, it's a two-person job.
Do you have, events where you drive the car with other cars?
Yeah,
or-
so sometimes we have cruise nights. Actually, every Thursday we do a cruise night. We haven't done it this season just because the visitor count just hasn't been enough to warrant going. But yeah, years past we do cruise night every Thursday, and it's pretty much Tucson car culture at its finest. It's everyone that has an old car in Tucson. It's an event they do at local hamburger shops. And then we park out in the parking lot and spend the evening looking at cars, which is a lot of fun. And then once annually, we have a huge car show, about 2,000 cars that we take these cars to. We don't like to use them in parades with an air cooled engine. They don't do well with those. They like to be driven at speed. Now, the 1923 is pretty interesting. That is an Opera coupe. And it was a passenger seat because it wasn't thought that she'd be bothered with passengers. This was her personal car. And I bet you can't guess the one car in this building that we don't take out and drive. It's behind our very advanced anti-theft device.
Yeah, that's very good.
Bumpers around the thing.
And that car has been parked there since before I was even born, so just that's kind of what I did.
Yeah, that is.
No passenger seat.
Kinda like
It's
when
a
the tree goes up.
car made for a woman.
So this building is where they did a lot of the restoration work, and you'll notice it's divided in half. This was the coach building side, that was the paint.
So they built the building around it?
So, funny story with this building. If the city asks, this is a carport. That's what it was. Franklin Olympic before. Okay. This is our 33 Franklin Olympic.
33 Franklin Olympic.
Because it represents a partnership between Franklin and Rio. Now, in 1933, Franklin were still retailing upwards of $3,000, and they realized that the luxury car market was really not the ideal one to be in. Rio was also not doing too hot during the Depression, and they partnered, and what they did is they sent a Rio flying flat body, which is what this is, to Franklin. Franklin outfitted it with their powertrain and their interior and sold it as the Franklin Olympic. So you could get a cabriolet like this for $1,500. You can get a hardtop coupe or a sedan for a little less than $1,400. So this was Franklin's medium-priced offering. They did sell quite a bit of these, but not in enough volume to keep the company afloat. And with that, that is the final Franklin I have to show you. We are recently an equal opportunity employer, and we have 2 Packards and a Chevrolet. So, it's all steel, has their water-cooled straight 8. It does also have 100 horsepower. Franklin's latest 6 was 100 horse, so these are pretty equivalent. And this car actually would have been competing with our 31 Franklin Deluxe Coupe when it was new. So it's neat that they've ended up next to each other. Now, I love Packard. One of the things I like with Packard is that they have such road presence. Look at a Packard and you immediately know that that's what it is. It has its signature radiator shell, and the shape of that actually trickles down into the headlamps and to your parking lamps, which is pretty cool. Of course, this has the Goddess of Speed ornament on it. This one actually has secondary pilot ray headlamps, and those are actually connected to the steering box. So as you turn the steering wheel, your pilot rays move with you.
Oh, interesting.
So how many ways can this thing break?
Well, it's currently broken, so at least one.
At least one.
Yeah.
Good paints.
No, it really is just all around a bad paint job. But there's actually only a handful of these Victorias left. This is a pretty hard to find body style. It's one of the very last standard 8 Packards. Because late 31 into 32, they started with Super 8s.
This was 31.
Yeah. All right.
If you last picture here, this is a Packard.
Yeah, the larger one was put out by the
This
Franklin
particular
Club.
car had transported
Okay.
Franklin D. Roosevelt.
Yes, and you could come through it, you're welcome to, but Mr. Hubbard actually published this. Talks a lot about Franklin's in general, and a lot of our cars.
It has, I think, a lot of articles from there for years, but they're all
This Packard
in 06.
stayed in Tucson since it was purchased.
It was
And the
compiled
owner
earlier, but I
was
think
good
filed
friends
in
with
06,
the
yeah.
president
Yeah.
and would pick him up at the rail yard with this car.
Sometimes when you're looking for an example.
Anyway, that's the end of our morning video. I hope you enjoyed it.